My name is Chabala, and this is my story. My sister was baptized here a couple of months ago, and my story is pretty closely intertwined with hers, as you might guess. I grew up in a household where, we bounced around churches a lot, and the primary reason for that was my father was actually a drug addict and an alcoholic, and more than that, though, he was somebody really desperately searching for truth, and that's something I remember more profoundly about him than anything else. I remember him as a kind man and a really desperate man, and a man who was always searching for something, and that led us to go to 10 to 15 different churches while I was growing up. We actually attended here for a little while I was in high school, and he would delve into different religions, Buddhism most notably, really seemed to stick, and he would combine aspects of Christianity and Buddhism, just trying to find something to help him get through, and something that made sense for him, because no matter how many churches we went to, no matter what we were doing at any given time, he never seemed to fully grasp what the gospel was, and I hadn't at that point either. Obviously, I was young, and we were bouncing around churches, and I saw some kids I became friends with, and I heard the gospel 100 times from 100 different preachers, and it never seemed to stick. It was the story of God's Son, Jesus Christ, crucified on the cross, and I thought to myself, well, a lot of other people were crucified too. Why was it different this time? I thought maybe he was a really charismatic guy who attracted some followers, and that's what that was, and a lot of people are being duped right now. And I would talk to my friends, and they didn't know better. They said, I just believe this, and I didn't understand that at all, and that led to a very antagonistic stance towards Christianity for most of my youth. I'd have a lot of Christian friends, and I didn't understand it. I would go to church, and I didn't really want to ever be there. I really hated going. I didn't enjoy youth group. It just seemed like everybody understood something I didn't, and in my pride, I actually thought I understood something that they didn't. That everything they thought was meaningless, and that it couldn't possibly be true, and that they were just trying to pacify themselves to get through the day. That was my view throughout middle school, high school, and into college. And I came to CSU my first 2 years there. I had largely the same stance. I didn't enjoy my theology courses. I apologize, Dr. Lackey. I really didn't want to be there. I thought I was learning something that really wouldn't have much value for my life, and I was more interested in, studying, philosophy, seeing what that had to offer, different religions like my father had. What's the deal with Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism, and as far as like great literature, what in that could ring true for me in my life. And the best things I found were that there would be little bits of truths in these books that at best could diagnose a symptom of a disease that it wouldn't dare say it could cure. There wasn't usually a tone of hope when you would get through with a book or a poem or something of that nature, and nothing that would last, nothing that I found could get me through more than a day, and just, I don't know, it was nothing but a temporal happiness at best. And I get to college, and first 2 years, like I said, I had a very antagonistic view towards most of my peers in Christianity, and I got into fights with my RD, and I just didn't want to be there overall. But it was the place where I was to get out of my house, because that was a little bit tense at the time. And I remember that my junior year came along, and it was nothing other than the Holy Spirit just beginning to prepare my heart for what God would one day do. And I started to take a little bit more of an interest in my theology courses, and I decided that if I was going to reject this thing, I was going to know what I was rejecting. And I wasn't necessarily bent on rejecting it, I just didn't believe it would have value for me because it hadn't. And I had read the Bible through twice, and I believe that's all I needed to do, and I didn't understand it, and I didn't believe that there was anything more to understand about it. And I was very, very wrong. And throughout my last 2 years at college, I was just learning more, paying attention to my theology courses, and just my peers and in chapel, and actually caring about what was being said, even if I didn't necessarily believe it. But it wouldn't be till after I graduated where I got the job that I wanted. And the first month and a half there, I just saw a lot of people that were as bleak and hopeless as my father was, and he was continuing to spiral out of control, and his addiction was taking a toll on him in ways that would eventually end his life. And I saw potential for myself ending up there, and I really desperately didn't want that, but I really didn't know a way around it either. I just saw hopelessness everywhere I looked and in everything I read, and nothing that could offer me any lasting joy. And it wasn't until one day in October of 2018 that I was driving into work at 5:30 in the morning, and there was, song playing, and there was nothing unique about the day whatsoever. I think it was a Tuesday, and I'm driving into work, and all of a sudden I'm just thinking how desperate I was for something, and for something to offer me anything that would make me willing and wanting to get through another day even. And for seemingly no reason whatsoever, that is the moment that God decided to pour his grace over me and just say, you're mine. And all of a sudden everything about the gospel story clicked. Jesus didn't just die on a cross. He wasn't just another man crucified in ancient Rome. It was God's wrath that was intended for me, poured upon Christ because God chose to do that. That never rang true for me in such an intimate way, that was meant for me. That the wrath that God poured out on Christ his wrath couldn't have been satiated any other way. It was intended to do me eternally and keep me eternally separated from him. And that's entirely what I deserved. For what I saw at one point is just nothing more than misunderstanding life, but it was actually, I was rebelling against God. And the fact that in that moment, in that seemingly pointless moment, he would pour his grace over me, that he would express to me in ways that I couldn't understand through reading, that I couldn't understand through listening, I couldn't understand through listening to sermons or any books, that in that moment he was going to redeem me and I had nothing to do with it, is something that to this day will make me tear up when I think about it. And I can't, there's no words for me to summarize what happened. And it's the day that he gave me a new heart and a new mind, and from that moment forward I've had hope. It hasn't always felt as I imagined it would, but it's always there, and God has always given me access to the joy that comes through a relationship with him. And I always desire to pursue him and to learn more about him, to grow in my relationship with him. And my goal and my desire is to inspire others to do the same. I don't want to be a person that can't defend my faith and doesn't know why I believe what I believe, because it's too precious for that in my mind. And I won't understand why on that day, that otherwise seemingly pointless day. That's when God chose to save me, but it is. And that is where obviously my story is being written still, but that's where I was saved, and for the sake of today, that's where my story ends.